Everyone watched Jon Snow come back to life, but almost nobody noticed what the show was actually telling them in that moment. Season 6, Episode 2, Home. Melisandre stands over Jon's body in the dim light of Castle Black's preparation room. She washes him. She cuts his hair. She speaks the words. Nothing happens. She leaves. Everyone in the room gives up and walks out, and then Ghost's head lifts. And then Jon gasps. The internet exploded. Fans screamed. People who had been saying he's really gone for 10 months since the Season 5 finale got to say, "I told you so" instead. It was one of the biggest moments in the show's history, and everyone was so busy celebrating that almost all of them missed the most important thing the scene was doing. Hidden inside that rebirth sequence is a set of details so carefully placed, so deliberately constructed, that when you see them, you realize the writers were telling you something much deeper than just Jon is alive. They were telling you who Jon Snow actually is, what his return costs, what it changes, and what it quietly, devastatingly takes from him. Let's go through every single one of them. Detail 1. The breath. It comes too late. The moment everyone remembers wrong. Go back and watch it frame by frame. Melisandre finishes. She waits. Nothing. She looks at Davos. Nothing. She walks out of the room. The camera holds on Jon's body, alone on the table. Sir Davos is the last to leave. He looks back. Still nothing. He closes the door. Only then, after everyone has given up, after the room is empty, after the hope has officially left the building, does Ghost react? Does Jon stir? Does the breath come? Detail 2. Ghost, his wolf, wakes first. The bond that has been there since Season 1. Before Jon moves even a millimeter, Ghost lifts his head. Seconds later, Jon gasps. This is not a random detail. This is the show reminding you of something it established in the very first episode and never fully explained. When Jon was fatally wounded in the Season 5 finale, his consciousness did not simply wink out. The books make this explicit in a way the show only hints at. Some part of Jon went into Ghost. Some fragment of who he was took refuge in his dire wolf, while his body lay on the snow at Castle Black. Ghost waking before Jon is the show's quiet nod to this. Ghost knows Jon is coming back before Jon's body shows any sign of it, because Ghost has been carrying something of Jon with him this whole time. The soul, or whatever we want to call it, is finding its way home. Ghost feels it happening first. Almost no one caught this on first watch. They were watching Jon's face. The show knew they would be. Ghost's reaction is in the corner of the frame, easy to miss if you blink, but it was placed there deliberately, and it means everything. Detail 3. The wounds are still there. He came back broken, not fixed. Here is the detail that most directly tells you what Jon's return actually cost him. And most people glossed over it in the excitement of him being alive. Jon Snow comes back with every single stab wound still on his body. When he sits up and gasps, he is covered in the injuries that ended his life. They are closed, healed over, but they are visible, scarred, permanent. The chest wounds, the stomach wounds, the wound in his side, all of them still there, all of them marking him. All of them written into his skin forever. Game of Thrones does something much more honest and much more disturbing. Jon comes back carrying what happened to him. He cannot look in a mirror without seeing the night his own brothers drove their blades into him. He cannot take off his shirt without being reminded. His body is a record of his betrayal. And every single day he is alive, it is there on his skin, telling the story. This also connects to something Melisandre says later about Beric Dondarrion, the man the Lord of Light has brought back multiple times. She notes that each time Beric returns, he is a little less himself, a little more diminished. Something is taken each time. He loses memories. He loses pieces of who he was. He comes back, but not completely. The scars on Jon's body are the physical version of that. He came back, but not entirely whole. The wounds are still there. Something was left behind in whatever place he went. And the show is showing you this with visual language rather than dialogue, trusting you to notice. Most viewers noticed the scars briefly and then moved on, relieved he was alive. The 1% who stayed with it understood. This is not the same Jon Snow who was betrayed at Castle Black. Something in him has fundamentally changed. Detail 4. His eyes look very carefully at the first moment he opens them. This is the detail that generated the least discussion and deserves the most. When Jon's eyes open for the first time after his return, there is a brief, and we mean very brief, half a second at most, moment where something in his gaze looks wrong. Not wrong in a bad production way. Fans who paused on this frame and examined it closely noticed that his pupils look unusually dilated, almost entirely black. The dark gray of his iris barely visible. Now, is this the lighting of the scene? Possibly. The break creature has also explained. Season, death, and death. The room is dim, and the human pupil dilates in low light. What season? I feel like I am dead. What those eyes say in that half second, if you believe it is intentional, and there are strong reasons to believe it is that for just a moment, when Jon Snow first returns, he is not entirely Jon Snow. He is something that has come back from somewhere else and is finding its way back into the familiar shape of the man it used to be. The human part is still arriving. What opened those eyes first was something other. Half a second. Blink and you miss it, which is exactly why almost no one caught it. Detail 5. Melisandre's face after it works. She was not expecting this either. Everyone watches Jon in this scene. Almost no one watches Melisandre watching Jon. When she is performing the ritual, her face carries a particular expression. Not confidence. Not the serene certainty of a priestess doing something she knows will work. She looks like someone who is trying very hard to believe, who has lost most of her belief, who is going through the motions because what else is there to do? We know this because of the scene it precedes the rebirth sequence. In episode 1 of season 6, we see Melisandre in her chambers at night. She removes her ruby necklace, and without it, she is not the ageless, fiery red woman the audience has seen for years. She is ancient, impossibly old, a woman who has been sustained by something external for so long, but without it, she collapses into what she actually is. She is a woman in crisis. Her faith has shattered. Everything she believed, that Stannis was the chosen one, that her visions were true, that the Lord of Light was guiding her, turned out to be wrong. Stannis is gone. Her credibility is in ruins. When she stands over Jon's body and begins the ritual, she is not a true believer performing a sacred act. She is a broken person making one last desperate attempt. And it works. Not because she is worthy, not because her faith is strong. It works despite all of that. When Davos comes back and finds Jon alive, watch where the camera cuts. It cuts to Melisandre, and her face is not triumphant. It is not relieved. It is stunned. She is looking at the evidence that the Lord of Light answered her even when she had stopped believing. And that is more terrifying to her than if it had not worked at all, because now she has to figure out what to do with a faith that was rebuilt by a miracle she did not earn and could not have predicted. That face. 3 seconds of screen time. Almost no one mentions it. It is the most complex emotional beat in the entire scene. Detail 6. The parallel to Daenerys in the fire. Two chosen people. Two different kinds of return. The show is built on parallels. Characters mirror each other. Storylines echo across different settings and different characters. If you watch Game of Thrones with an eye for structure, you start to see the same beats recurring in different forms. Jon's rebirth scene was constructed in direct parallel to a scene from season 1, Daenerys walking out of the funeral pyre. Both scenes involve fire imagery. Jon's hair is being washed and cut by firelight. His body is surrounded by candles and torches. The entire scene is bathed in warm flame tongues. Both involve a woman performing a rite of power, Mirri Maz Duur's blood magic in Season 1, Melisandre's Lord of Light ritual in Season 6. Both involve a moment where the audience believes the attempt has failed, and both end with a person returning from somewhere that should not allow returns. But here is the key difference that the parallel highlights. When Daenerys emerged from that fire, she came out transformed, elevated. She stepped into her power. She was reborn as something greater than she had been. The experience gave her something. Jon comes back gasping, and alone, a dim room, with his wounds still on him and nothing to say about where he went. The parallel is there to make the contrast visible. Both are chosen by powerful forces. Both survive something unsurvivable. But Daenerys' return is triumphant. Jon's is traumatic. One is a coronation. The other is a wound. That difference tells you everything about where both characters are going. And it was hiding inside a visual rhyme that the show built across 5 seasons for the handful of people watching closely enough to see it. Detail 7. His oath is technically fulfilled. The legal loophole that changes his entire story arc. This is the detail that the show itself eventually makes explicit, but plants quietly in the rebirth scene for attentive viewers to catch first. The Night's Watch oath contains a specific phrase. It says, "I shall live and die at my post." Not, "I shall serve forever." Not, "I shall never leave." Live and die at my post. Jon Snow did both. He lived at Castle Black, He led the watch. He fought at Hardhome. He brought back the evidence of the White Walker threat that nobody wanted to believe. And then he was fatally wounded at Castle Black. At his post, by his own brothers. He died at his post. The oath is complete. The man who gasps back to life in that room is not technically bound by the Night's Watch anymore. He fulfilled the terms. The Jon Snow who died at Castle Black completed his obligation. The Jon Snow who returns is, by the logic of the oath itself, free. When he eventually says, "My watch has ended," and walks away from the Night's Watch, the show is not having him abandon his duty. It is having him acknowledge a legal reality that was established the moment he came back from the other side. He already paid the ultimate price. He cannot owe it twice. Plant that detail in the Rebirth Scene, and suddenly his entire Season 6 arc, from walking away from Castle Black, to reuniting with Sansa, to rallying the North, is not Jon Snow turning his back on his oath. It is Jon Snow understanding, perhaps instinctively in that gasping first moment of return, that he has been released. Why these details matter. What the scene is really about, the show hid the whole truth in plain sight. Take all 9 of these details together, and the picture that emerges is very different from the crowd-pleasing favorite character lives moment that most people experienced. Jon Snow's rebirth is not a triumphant moment. It is a complicated, costly, slightly terrifying one. He comes back with his wounds, with silence about where he was, with eyes that for half a second do not look entirely like his, with Ghost waking before him as though his soul needed a bridge to find its way home, with a faith healer so broken by her own failures that she performed the rite more out of desperation than belief, with sound design that announced the return before anyone in the room knew it was coming, with an oath quietly resolved in the moment of its apparent greatest violation. Every single one of these details is the show asking you to look past the surface, to not just celebrate that Jon is alive, but to ask what it means that he is alive, what it cost, what it changed, what the man who gasped back into existence in that dim room actually is now, compared to what he was before. Good television rewards close watching. Great television hides its best work in places that most people will walk right past, designed to be found by the people paying close enough attention. Jon Snow's rebirth scene is great television, not because of the gasp, because of everything that surrounds it, quietly doing its work, waiting to be noticed. Most fans saw a hero come back. The 1% who looked closer saw a man who came back different, carrying something heavy, released from one obligation and walking straight into another, with wounds that will never fully close, and a silence about the other side that says more than any vision or divine message ever could. Now go back and watch the scene again. You'll never see it the same way.